Welcome to the first of the three contemporary issues lesson for the hospitality environment. The first one is quite heavy and slightly scientific as well, as it deals with climate change. And obviously when you talk about climate change, you need to understand what it is and you have to define it as well. Now, the objectives for the lesson is to define what climate change is, analyze the impacts of climate change on the hospitality industry, evaluate the industry's impacts on climate change, and evaluate methods on which to take corrective action to improve the industry's impact on climate change. This last bit is something that you will do and you will do research for, and also again this research is vital for your exam actually, so you make sure that you do the research properly as well. Now, what is climate change? I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I just give you the definitions, and basically obviously we know that is that the Earth intercepts the sun's radiation, and that's the energy that determines our weather and our climate as well. About 1/3 of this solar radiation is reflected back into space. What happens to the rest? It's absorbed by the different parts of the climate systems, and these could be the atmosphere, the oceans, ice, land, and obviously also the various life forms that are present. Now, the Earth then sends its energy out into space and or re-radiates in the form of long-wave radiation. Some of the energy is again absorbed and re-emitted, and that's known as the greenhouse effect. And the rest of the energy is lost in space. It has to be noted that there's a delicate long-term balance between the outgoing radiation and incoming solar energy. And any change in the factors that affect the process of incoming and outgoing energy, or change the energy distribution itself, will change our climate. And I'm going to talk about what this might be now. There can be natural factors that influence the changes in solar output. So, for example, the amount of energy that comes from the sun is not constant, and the scientists have realized that there's an 11-year solar cycle in the temperature record of the Earth. So there are certain cycles in how the temperature varies and how obviously the sun radiates its energy. The other thing is the change in the Earth's orbit. So any variation in the orbit of the Earth around the sun obviously changes where and when solar energy is received on Earth. And again, you can tell this, you can tell that by the seasons, for example. It's warmer, hotter here in the summer than it, for example, is in the winter, because the Earth is close to the sun in the summer than it is in the winter, which also influences obviously the length of the days. The change in the orbit affects the amount of energy that is reflected and absorbed, and the orbital variations are believed to be a factor in initiating the ice ages. So again, if there's a slight change if you think back to ice ages, what scientists believe is that they have been a result of the change in how the Earth orbits around the sun. Now, the other thing, of course, is the currents, and you all know that there has been a big issue with the Gulf Stream. Has it changed? Has it disappeared? Obviously, looking at the warm currents and the cold currents, again, they affect our weather systems as well. And if these currents change, the weather systems change as well. And this again is the Earth's position in relation to the sun. So again, if the orbit changes, if the orbit changes slightly, this is if the Earth tips slightly, or that's how the areas that are affected as to how the heat from the sun hits the Earth. And as it said at the bottom, the pole's heat is spread over a wider area, so it's cooler. So if you look at the South Pole and the North Pole, the sun, the way it goes, is on a bigger area here, so it's not as centralized, as focused on a smaller area, like here, for example. So it goes on a bigger area. So that's why it's cold on the North and South Pole, and that's why it's hotter around the equator as well. Now, the greenhouse effect, and I'm sure we've all heard about it. How does it work? Well, solar energy enters the atmosphere of the Earth, and the Earth emits energy at long wavelengths. Now, obviously, this helps to warm the surface. Again, we know that. There's no rocket science. Rocket science, obviously, the lower, the closest layers of the atmosphere to the Earth as well. So if it's warm, then obviously the more solar energies come to the Earth. And then it keeps it 33 degrees warmer than it wouldn't otherwise be. So that's a natural greenhouse effect. That's what's normally happening, and this is what we know about it. If this wasn't happening, and if you consider the Earth to be 33 degrees centigrade colder than it is now, we all know, again, you have this whole ice age issue, and no life would be possible on Earth. Now, again, the greenhouse gases absorb this energy and radiate much of it back to the surface, and it's a bit like an insulating blanket. What happens is that about a third of the energy that enters from the sun is reflected back into space. The rest is absorbed by the atmosphere, and obviously some is absorbed by the surface of the Earth as well. And then some of this energy escapes to space, but some is absorbed again and re-emitted by clouds and greenhouse gases such as water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitric oxide. Now, what we have now are aerosols, and they are little particles that absorb and reflect incoming solar radiation. If these aerosols change, either in type or quantity, it affects the amount of solar energy reflected or absorbed. So it might be either there might be less energy that's absorbed. And we all know that is, again, you look at the holes in the ozone layer there as well. Now, obviously, we've done a lot to contribute to changes in the greenhouse factors, which is not necessarily good. You can enhance the greenhouse effect, so you've got naturally occurring greenhouse gases, as I said before, that balance out keep the Earth warm enough. Changes in land use. If you cut the forest down and replace it with agricultural land, that actually affects how the greenhouse gases are absorbed, because the trees are gone, the leaves are gone, and they can't absorb any of that. And the atmospheric aerosols, obviously through anything what we do, we add aerosols to the atmosphere. And this is from industry and also from agriculture, and that obviously affects the greenhouse. That has an impact on the greenhouse effect. Again, you also look at natural vegetation and being replaced with asphalt or concrete. They alter the way the Earth's surface reflects sunlight and releases heat, and also that affects evaporation, runoff, and rainfall patterns. And again, if you think about resorts or tourist areas where they have taken trees down, where they've made ski slopes, built hotels, there's an issue with erosion and things like that. So all that obviously affects the greenhouse gases as well. Now, so this shows that actually the humans have had a massive impact on the changes of on the greenhouse gases. What has already happened because of that? It's getting warmer. And obviously the global carbon dioxide emission has increased, and this is due to cars, flights, and more industry coming along as well. So all of that has had an impact on the environment, and obviously also on our climate. Now, there are just a few indicators of climate change in the UK. I'm not going to go through all of them, okay, but the air temperatures have changed. How much rainfall we've had in the southeast. And if you just think back to the beginning of this year, the winter was cold, yes, but it was really dry, for example. How much rainfall have we had annually? Have there been changes? Any changes in river flows or drying on flooding of rivers? So all these are things, changing of sea levels. These are all the changes that might have happened or has happened and will happen in the UK alone. And then again, you've got a few more here. So what are the yields in agriculture? How much water have we been using for agriculture? Also for vineyards, I mean, vineyards weren't here a few years ago. Now they're coming up everywhere, and obviously that land is being used. Has there been a change in wildlife because it's getting warmer, for example? Has the migration of birds changed? Things like that. So it's a lot of are the leaves on trees becoming earlier because it's getting warmer earlier as well? It's all relative, so one year might be worse than the other or better than the other, but there are all slight changes that as a whole have contributed to, have been because of climate change. Now, what does it mean for the UK? It's predicted that the temperature may rise 2 to 3.5 degrees by 2080. Winters become wetter, summers drier. It might be great for the UK. We might have Mediterranean climate. But then if you think about Spain, and they're getting hotter as well, people might not go there, so maybe people might go more to stay on holiday here. Sea levels will rise, storms might become more frequent, and the cloud cover in the south may reduce and increasing the risk of skin cancer. So again, it all is with the increase in temperature. More heat waves are predicted. Flooding and landslides more frequent, and then again disruption of rail and road networks, and different sorts of fish or wildlife might be visible in the UK as well, and other fish might die out. There is a debate, and it's just a bit of food for thought for you. There's a statement that says buying locally reduces the carbon footprint, support local produce and help the environment, so all about food miles. Statement B says buying locally condemns developing countries, farmers to poverty and starvation. Just think about it. I'm not gonna, you might agree with one and not the other, or you might just see both sides, but it's just a bit of food for thought. Now, I know this has been a bit heavy, and you might want to look a bit more into this, but have a break now, and then we relate to climate change and all these issues to the hospitality industry.